Hey, it's your girl, Dr. J. Listen, let's talk a little bit about this 4B and this W4B movement that is taking social media, particularly TikTok, from what I've seen, by storm. Let me first make this declaration that women have a right to choose whatever movements they decide to rally behind. But me personally, I do not endorse it, nor is it something that I would follow. Well, you might be saying, well, if that's the case, then why are you interested in talking about it? Well, I'm actually glad you asked that question. Here's the thing. Me being a clinician, it's always something that's driving me to look a little further at things from a psychological ramification, or I have this mindset that says that just because something is presented to us does not mean that there is not some underlying issue or something that is a cover up or that is not being talked about. So, yeah. I want to talk about this 4B movement a little bit. And of course, I went and I read and did a little bit of research just so it'll help me inform my position or my perspective on it. And so I actually want to talk a little bit about the origination of this 4B in South Korea before it became 2019 widely recognized. And so the Cut publication, and that is a publication in New York, pointed out that there was this young lady by the name of Young Mai, and she was a Korean woman who was strolling through Twitter in 2018, and she saw some protest footage going on, and she became very inspired, and I guess she was able to relate it to some of the problems and concerns that women in South Korea was having. And so this movement, it gained its popularity in 2018 by this young woman, Young Mai, and about 20% of other females who supporting her. And so it led to the 2019 4B movement. And so just to give a little bit of information, the 4B is shorthand for four Korean words that actually starts with bi, B-I, or means no. And so the first one is Baihan, which means no heterosexual marriages. Then there is Bai Chosan, which means no childbirth. And then there is Bayone, which means no dating. And then the last one is Bisexual, Bisekseu, Bisexual means no heterosexual relationship. And one other thing these Korean women who was behind or supporting this movement did is that they shaved their hairs. And so the first thing I want to say that if we are going to adopt something from someone else's culture, then maybe we should consider all the factors that go along with adopting someone's culture, specifically to, yes, W4B. And so they shaved their heads because they felt that because they were making a stance and there was no need for them to look beautiful. And also they cut back on spending for whatever it was they spent to make them look beautiful. And so they said that because we are saying no, we no longer need this beauty. So I'm just curious and just asking question for those who are following the W4B, what's your stance on that? So are you picking and choosing which aspects of this 4B program or movement it is that you want to consider? And yes, I did read that by the women of South Korea taking the stance that it did have a major impact on their growing population. The fertility rate went extremely low, and in fact, I read something that says that the fertility rate in South Korea is at its lowest, or it's the lowest in the world. But then there's a lot to consider in that too. Even those who are making the decision that they're going along with this 4B or W4B, Perhaps you need to consider 30 or 40 years from now when you are older and you might look to someone to take care or support you, and you made this conscious decision: no men, no children, limited your relationship. It's just a thought, something to consider, because sometimes we make irrational decisions because of an emotion that we're dealing with. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But I want to now look at the psychological ramifications that cannot be ignored about this South Korea 4B movement. And so the article that I read, it says that this young lady, Young Mai, like many other Korean women, went through major family dysfunction, and that this behavior was handed down from generation to generation. This led by patriarchal men and cultural practices, those things that depress them and suppress their emotion. And interestingly, I'm familiar. Here's this book that talks about ethnicity and family therapy. And as you can see, everything is highlighted in dealing with Korean families, because while I was in school, I had to make sure that I read enough about different cultures so that I can be could be culturally competent. So I'm saying that to say that there, is a lot more to consider. But it was noted that the young lady, Young May herself, talked about being very depressed as she got older. And so here's the thing: mental health in Korea is considered taboo. And so then there's limited options that women could take as far as to work through the mental anguish and the stress and things that may have been brought on by men. And so I also read an article from this publication called Namhon, South Korea, that talks about mental health and counseling being a very taboo thing, and even that Korean American women who have acculturated, that mean grown accustomed to American ways, they still see counseling and mental health as taboo. And so I'm bringing this up because I'm thinking in terms of this 4B movement being an extreme movement, and the option that these women took because they shy away from mental health and mental health wellness. And so then I have to ask, how much healing is this 4B movement offering, not only to the Korean women, but to the W4B women and those who are following the trend now and saying that they're behind that movement? Because here's what I learned about trauma and needing to be healed. It says that healing from trauma, it's about owning yourself and regaining yourself again. And so then maybe you might want to consider, women of the West, 4B movement, where does this resemblance come from? Or how closely matched are you in emotions with those in Korea? And so your bitterness, your resentment, where does that come from? These are the things that I'm thinking that perhaps you need to think about and consider when you think about making or adopting someone else's movement and saying, this is what you're going to stand by. This is what you're going to live by. And I also read something in the mission from the W4B movement about them having a lot of conversation with young women and, forming small groups, which I want to call subgroups. And that could be problematic, because if you're forming these groups on TikTok, it's just a matter of time where the conflict and the clashing and the crab mentality is going to set in. So then what example are you really setting for them? And not only that, when you're recruiting young women under the age of 25 and saying that, you want to get to them before they get married and before they have babies, is this a form of influence, manipulation, or brainwashing? And so if you move them from the foundation that they are used to, what type of paradigm shift? What do you have in place? What standards are you setting that they can grow from and, improve their life from, as women who pulled away from men and following these 4Bs? It's just a thought. I'm just rambling with words, but what I do want to say is that before you make drastic decisions and stand behind somebody else's movement, be informed. Don't be irrational. And lastly, do not make emotional reactive decisions on your life and your position. This is just from your girl, Dr. J.